Imagine two ancient cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, mentioned several times in the Bible. They were situated in a region near the Dead Sea, a very interesting place due to its unique geographical features. But what really draws attention to these cities is not just where they were located, but what happened to them. The cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were known for their inhabitants, who committed many sins and lived in a way that displeased God. According to the Bible, the people of these cities were very wicked and practiced immoral acts with no respect for God or others. Before we get into the details of their destruction, it is worth understanding a little more about the historical context of these cities. They were important urban centers at the time, with a population that lived in apparent prosperity, but also in great sin. As the sacred texts tell us, God then decided that he needed to act against these cities to show his justice and power. He wanted to send a clear warning to everyone who continued to live in sin, showing what could happen if they did not change their ways. But this story is not just about destruction. It also speaks of mercy, justice, and hope. To better understand what happened and why God made this decision, we need to know the people involved and the events that led to the downfall of these cities. Stay until the end, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. Now that you have an idea of what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah, let's get to know the people who are part of this story better. The main characters are Abraham and his nephew Lot. They are fundamental to understanding what happened in these cities. Abraham, whose original name was Abram, was a great patriarch of the Bible. He is considered the father of many nations and had a very close relationship with God. Abraham always sought to do God's will and lived a righteous and pious life. At a certain point, God changed Abram's name to Abraham, which means father of a multitude of nations, to show the importance of his role in the divine plan. Lot was Abraham's nephew. He accompanied his uncle on his journeys and also had many possessions, such as cattle and servants. Lot is an interesting figure because, despite living in Sodom, he was a righteous person. He strived to do what was right even while surrounded by so much wickedness. The relationship between Abraham and Lot was full of affection and respect. Abraham always cared for Lot as if he were his own son. They traveled together and shared their lives, but at a certain point, they had to separate to avoid conflicts between their shepherds. Abraham, being generous, allowed Lot to choose the region where he wanted to live, and Lot chose the fertile plain near Sodom. This choice by Lot ended up being crucial to the story, as he and his family became part of the events leading to the destruction of the cities. Abraham, on the other hand, continued to live his life of faith and obedience to God, being an example of righteousness and justice, always ready to intercede for his nephew. It is believed that Sodom and Gomorrah were located in the valley of Sodom, a fertile and well-irrigated place, perfect for agriculture and livestock. This valley was described in the Bible as like the garden of the Lord, because of its beauty and fertility. This explains why Lot chose this region to live when he separated from Abraham. However, this fertile area also had its disadvantages. The Bible describes that the inhabitants of Sodom and Gomorrah were extremely wicked. The wealth and fertility of the region seem to have contributed to the moral decay of its inhabitants. Today, many archaeologists and researchers try to pinpoint exactly where these cities were located. Excavations and studies in the region of the Dead Sea seek evidence of the destruction mentioned in the Bible. Some believe that the ruins of Sodom and Gomorrah may be submerged or buried under layers of sediment. So, what exactly made Sodom and Gomorrah so sinful? According to the Bible, the inhabitants of these cities were known for their great wickedness. They committed many immoral acts and lived in a way that directly defied principles of justice and goodness. One of the main sins attributed to them was their lack of hospitality and cruel treatment of strangers and travelers. They were also described as arrogant, selfish, and violent. Sexual immorality was another notable characteristic, with behaviors that went against God's teaching. This combination of sins created a corrupt and perverse society that ultimately attracted God's wrath. The Bible uses the story of Sodom and Gomorrah to illustrate what can happen when a community completely strays from ethical and moral values. The story takes an interesting turn, when Lot and his family are captured during a battle between cities. Upon hearing this, Abraham gathers his men and sets out on a rescue mission. He manages to free Lot and all the other prisoners, showcasing his courage and determination. Abraham refuses any reward from the king of Sodom because he didn't want to be associated with the riches of that corrupt city. This act by Abraham is a testament to his integrity and commitment to remain pure and righteous in the eyes of God. This rescue is significant because it highlights the bond between Abraham and Lot, and how this familial relationship influenced subsequent events. It also demonstrates Abraham's strong faith and his willingness to risk everything to save his nephew. In Genesis 18, God decides to personally verify the accusations against Sodom and Gomorrah. He sends 2 angels disguised as men to visit the city. When they arrive in Sodom, they are greeted by Lot, who insists on hosting them in his home. The situation quickly becomes dangerous. All the men of the city, from young to old, surround Lot's house and demand that he hand over the visitors so they can abuse them. Lot tries to protect his guests, even offering his own daughters in exchange. The crowd is determined to do evil. The angels then intervene, blinding the attackers and saving Lot and his family. They instruct Lot to flee immediately, as the destruction of the cities is imminent. This divine intervention is a clear demonstration of God's power and his justice in action. The angels instruct Lot and his family to flee without looking back. They are led out of the city and warned that anyone who looks back will be punished. However, during the escape, Lot's wife disobeys and looks back, instantly turning into a pillar of salt. Then, fire and sulfur rain down from the sky, destroying Sodom, Gomorrah, and all the surrounding cities. The land, once fertile and full of life, becomes a desert. This total destruction serves as a powerful warning about the consequences of living in sin and disobeying God. After the destruction, Lot and his daughters take refuge in the mountains, living in caves. They realize that there are no men around to marry and preserve their family line. So, in a desperate act, they get Lot drunk and have children with him. This final chapter in Lot's life shows the lasting consequences of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Even after surviving divine wrath, Lot and his daughters face significant challenges and must find ways to continue their lives in a drastically changed world. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is so impactful that it appears in various parts of the Bible, each offering a new perspective on the sins of these cities and the severity of God's punishment. In Isaiah 1:9-10, the prophet compares the situation of Jerusalem to that of Sodom and Gomorrah, warning that the city risks suffering a similar destruction if it does not repent of its sin. This passage underscores the gravity of moral corruption and the need for justice. Unless the Lord Almighty had left us some survivors, we would have become like Sodom. We would have been like Gomorrah. Ezekiel 16:49-50 highlights the sins of Sodom beyond sexual immorality. The prophet mentions pride, excessive idleness, and the failure to help the poor and needy. This broadens the understanding of why God decided to destroy these cities. Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy. In the New Testament, Jude 1:7 recalls the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah as an example of divine punishment for immorality and perverse sexual behavior. This reference is used to warn against following bad examples and disobeying God. In a similar way, Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding towns gave themselves up to sexual immorality and perversion. They serve as an example of those who suffer the punishment of eternal fire. The multiple biblical references to Sodom and Gomorrah help us understand the depth of the sins of these cities and the severity of their punishment. The story is not just a tale of destruction, but a continuous warning about the dangers of immorality, pride, and lack of compassion. It invites us to reflect on our own values and actions and to seek a righteous and morally correct life. Archaeological research continues to explore the Dead Sea region in search of remnants of Sodom and Gomorrah. Excavations at sites such as Tal el-Hammam suggest that these areas suffered sudden and catastrophic destruction, possibly due to a natural event like an asteroid or a volcanic explosion. A Sumerian document from the 19th century BC reports the passage of an asteroid that may have caused a devastating heatwave. This coincides with the biblical description of fire and sulfur falling from the sky, suggesting that a natural catastrophe may have been interpreted as a divine act in the biblical narrative. Thank you very much for joining us on this journey through the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any update. Leave your like and share it with your friends so that more people can learn and reflect on these incredible stories. Your participation is very important to us.